Chapter 1: How to Diagnose Dyslexia. 1.1 Understanding the Symptoms. To succeed with dyslexia, first you must understand the symptoms and receive a proper diagnosis. There are some major indicators that can help you discover if you or your loved one is suffering from dyslexia. As a child, some major signs are delayed talking and learning words slower than other children. Then, later, most people with dyslexia will experience a postponement in learning how to read. Other symptoms are headaches while reading and even speech impairment. Children with dyslexia may have confusion with the left-to-right concept while learning how to read. In addition, they may have behavioral problems. Children with dyslexia may act out due to their struggle with the standard educational system. The severity of dyslexia can range from severe to barely noticeable. Some children go through their entire childhood, adolescence, and adulthood never knowing why it is difficult for them to read. Symptoms could be as small as pronunciation issues or omitting letters while writing and reading. Dyslexia could be as minute as words appearing blurry and out of focus on the page when an individual has no other vision problems. In fact, dyslexia is commonly mistaken with a need for glasses. Just think about a vision test, which typically has letters that get increasingly smaller, or a driving vision test, which asks a participant to read road signs that appear to be a certain distance away. People with dyslexia might suffer in areas other than reading as well. For example, a student could suffer with math. Someone with dyslexia might complain of letters and numbers flipping around on the page. This can create an attention problem and make it hard for the person with dyslexia to focus. For me personally, I loved math, but sometimes one simple number flip could throw an entire equation off for me. I was lucky enough to have a few math teachers that would recognize these minor errors. Typically, it is also difficult for someone with dyslexia to read aloud. People with dyslexia might use an entirely wrong word while reading aloud. The word may fit in with the context clues, but it will not be what the text says. It might seem like they are reading based off memorization and not word by word. For example, if they read the sentence, "The man waltzed gracefully towards the water and cast his line for the fish to bite," they might instead say, "The man walked gracefully towards the water and casts his line for the fish to bite." This is them compensating for their inability to read each word individually and still understand the general concept and read with flow. Instead, because they can't read each word and still understand the concept, their brain automatically fills in the word with a word that looks similar and fits the context clues. Individuals with dyslexia typically have complete normal vision and intelligence. It is possible for someone with dyslexia to learn to the same extent as any other individual. However, the learning process may be a little different for them as opposed to their peers. Dyslexia affects the portion of the brain which processes language. It is a learning disability in which it is difficult for an individual to read due to trouble deciphering how speech sounds relate to letters. This makes it difficult for them to understand written words. All the symptoms above can be used to diagnose the disability. However, not everyone with dyslexia will have every symptom discussed. Typically, someone with dyslexia will have quite a few of them, though. If you, your child, or any loved one seems to be experiencing these symptoms, consult with a professional as soon as possible. After you understand the symptoms, the next step is to self-diagnose dyslexia. Once you have self-diagnosed, see a professional and get tested. Only a professional can provide you with the documentation you will need later in life. As someone who has dyslexia, I was lucky to receive an early diagnosis in 3rd grade when a teacher picked up on my symptoms. My mom, who received a late diagnosis, had the same symptoms too, but did not realize there was an established disability. So my mom and I received our diagnosis at the same time. The process for someone who receives a late diagnosis, such as my mom, versus someone like me who is diagnosed in elementary school, are very different. While it helped my mom to understand she has a disability, she had already learned how to self-accommodate for it. To this day, the main symptoms I still notice in my adult life are blurriness while reading and writing, headaches while reading, difficulty reading aloud, and mixing up letters and numbers. While I have found ways to accommodate for the symptoms, they never really go away. There is no cure currently, just different techniques for learning and coping. 1.2. The importance of early diagnosis. The next step to being successful despite dyslexia is to receive an early diagnosis. The sooner you are diagnosed, the more time you have to accommodate your learning style to your disability. If you receive a diagnosis before starting school, that can be very beneficial down the road. However, even if you were not diagnosed as a child, receiving a diagnosis as an adult can still be helpful. Once you understand the disability, you can accommodate for it, making life much easier. Whether it is in your career or personal life, there are tricks someone with dyslexia can use to make things simpler. Dyslexia has been linked to psychological issues in the past. The stigma that centers around learning disabilities is unfortunate. The word disability itself indicates it is some sort of impairment. In all honesty, though, there are some benefits to having dyslexia. For me personally, I have great study habits and work very hard, which I have always attributed to growing up with dyslexia. Unfortunately, though, like many others, it has at times made me question myself. I sometimes felt like I had low confidence. I was enough made fun of in school because of my learning disability. People with dyslexia may have low confidence when it comes to school. They might feel like they are dumb or less than their peers. The fact is, though, that is simply not true. The scholastic system is made to accommodate the learning style of most people. Individuals with dyslexia do not fall within the normal mold, but they are just as capable of learning as individuals who do not have a learning disability. Students with undiagnosed dyslexia often lose their enthusiasm for learning because it is so difficult. They can suffer from low self-esteem due to their disability and feel inadequate. This can be vastly improved simply by knowing and understanding their disability. When you recognize that it is a different way of learning, but not less than by any means, it is empowering and encouraging. People that have an undiagnosed learning disability that become discouraged may drop out of school, never living up to their full educational potential. It is possible to detect the disability early on by understanding the symptoms. As educators and people in general learn more about learning disabilities, diagnoses are happening earlier and more frequently within the school system. If it is possible to receive a diagnosis before the end of kindergarten, that would be ideal. Kids diagnosed later, even as late as 2nd or 3rd grade, will be playing a game of catch-up at that point. Having to learn what they should have already learned, in addition to taking on the new material, can be discouraging to a young student. A reading gap can be created if a student is unable to catch up. The gap can affect them for years to come, in school, work, and their personal life. In addition, the sooner any individual can establish proper learning habits and behaviors, the better off they will be. For me, personally, receiving a diagnosis in 3rd grade was like a breath of fresh air. As I mentioned, my diagnosis came when a teacher noticed that while I was not keeping up, it was not because I did not understand the material. She spoke with my mom, who then was able to get me evaluated by a professional. If not for that teacher, I may never have received a diagnosis. I can honestly say I'm not sure where I would be today if I had not received a diagnosis at that time.